My name is Clare Wittman, and for most of my life, I was the shadow at the edge of the family portrait. Not the golden child. Not the favorite. Not the daughter who fit the mold. That was my sister, Vanessa, flawless, poised, the one who could cry on cue and make it look like sincerity. I was the girl with tangled hair and dirt-streaked notebooks, obsessed with patterns in leaves and how memory worked in plants. I was the one who made everyone uncomfortable simply by being myself. I shouldn't have been surprised when, at the reading of my grandfather's will, my parents sat stone-faced while the lawyer handed Vanessa a check for $10 million, as if that were the final act in a play long rehearsed. They turned to me with dry smiles and said 4 words. Go earn your own. I didn't cry, didn't flinch, just stared at the polished walnut table and pretended the thunder in my chest wasn't audible to everyone in the room. But then something shifted. An older man in a gray suit stood slowly. His voice was calm, but it sliced through the air like a knife. There's one more document. He unfolded a worn envelope, edges soft with age, my grandfather's handwriting scrawled across it in confident block letters. My mother's smile faltered. My father's fingers twitched. Vanessa's expression soured like spoiled milk. That envelope changed everything. It was the match that lit the fire. A fire that would burn through every carefully constructed lie they'd ever told. And it led me to a place I hadn't set foot in for over a year. My grandfather's ranch on the edge of Charleston. The place where summer wind once whispered comfort and now carried the heavy breath of secrets. I pulled up to the ranch alone. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out of the car. The wind chimes on the porch, once the gentle soundtrack of sun tea and story time, now sounded hollow, like echoes from a memory someone tried to erase. The white paint on the front door was still chipped. The magnolia trees still leaned too far east, as if listening for something they'd stopped hearing years ago. I hesitated. And then I knocked. The door creaked open. So, you finally decided to show up. Her voice hadn't changed. Still sharp enough to cut glass. My grandmother. Hair pinned back tight, arms crossed, jaw set like stone. The last time I saw her, she hugged me with a pie dish still in her hand. Today, she looked like she wanted to throw it at me. Grandma, I said, stepping forward. What's going on? Her eyes didn't soften. Not even a flicker. They told me you didn't want to be bothered. That you had a new life. That you'd moved on. Her voice broke for half a second, then returned to steel. Your grandfather called for you, Claire. Every day on his deathbed. He asked for you. My throat tightened. That's not true. I tried to call. I came by in March. Vanessa answered the door. She told me no one was home. Her eyes narrowed like she was trying to read something behind my face. We were here. We were always here. She turned and disappeared into the house, not waiting for a response. I followed her in. The air inside was heavier, like the walls were holding their breath. She returned with a leather notepad and handed it to me. This is the number he kept calling. The one he said was yours. I looked down. My grandfather's handwriting, neat, slightly slanted, stared back at me. This isn't my number. I've had the same one since college. She stared at it, brows knitting slowly into realization. They told us you changed it. That you didn't want to be found. That you were ashamed of us. No, I whispered. They lied to you. They cut me off. Her hands trembled. She sank into the worn floral armchair like her bones had collapsed under truth. They told me the funeral was at noon, I said. I showed up at the church. It was empty. She looked up, ghost white. The funeral was at 9 o'clock, she said softly. They told everyone you didn't come. That you didn't care. I choked on air. I would never have missed it. Never. Silence settled between us, thick and full of everything unsaid. I sank down beside her, clutching her hand. I didn't know, I said. I didn't know he was even sick until it was too late. She brushed her thumb against my knuckles. For the first time there was warmth.
We know now.
And that's what matters. The next hour passed like a storm gathering on the horizon. I sat at the old kitchen table, tracing my fingers along the grooves in the wood. The same table where Grandpa taught me about weather patterns and let me test the pH of his lemonade. I remembered the day he asked about my college thesis, plant memory, and environmental recall, and he actually listened. No one else ever did. Then the front door creaked. Footsteps on the porch. Voices. My mother's overly sweet tone. "Oh my, it still smells the same in here." My father's dry calm. "I thought this was already settled." Vanessa's groan. "Seriously? This couldn't wait?" Then Grandma's voice, sharp as flint. "Sit down. Mr. Harold Keene is on his way. And when he arrives, we'll finish what Walter started." They didn't know I was in the next room. They didn't know what was about to hit them. Neither did I. But deep down, I hoped for one thing, that for the first time in my life, someone would finally speak the truth out loud. That love wasn't silence. That exclusion wasn't discipline. That gaslighting wasn't parenting. That what they did to me wasn't care. It was cruelty with a smile. And then the lawyer arrived. And everything changed. The room was too quiet, not peaceful, tense. Like a held breath, no one wanted to be the first to exhale, and I sat at the far end of the long mahogany table in Mr. Keene's office, fingers clasped tightly in my lap. Across from me sat my parents, Betty and Charles Whitman, dressed in their version of grief, polished black suits and practiced frowns. My older sister Vanessa, ever the showman, wore 4-inch heels and a veil that didn't hide the fact that she hadn't shed a single tear. The only person missing from that room was the only one who had ever made it feel like home. My grandfather, Walter Whitman. He'd been gone for 8 days. 8 long, disorienting days since the phone call from Grandma, her voice trembling but her words sharp. "He's gone, Claire. He asked for you. I think you should come home." Home. A word that tasted different in my mouth every time I said it. I hadn't seen my parents in 3 years. The last time we spoke, they told me I was being ungrateful and unreasonable for leaving a prestigious research job in New York to pursue experimental farming in a converted warehouse. They stopped calling after that, which was fine. I stopped listening a long time before. Vanessa had been the bridge between us for a while, though not a strong one. She made efforts I didn't ask for, apologies that came with strings. Our last conversation had ended with me saying, "You don't get to weaponize kindness." She didn't like that. Mr. Keene cleared his throat, breaking the stillness in the room. As you all know, Walter Whitman left behind a revised will and testament, as well as a personal letter. Per his request, the letter is to be read aloud before we begin the distribution of assets. He adjusted his glasses and opened the envelope. My breath caught in my chest. His handwriting. Slanted, deliberate. Grandpa's voice echoed in my head with every word. To those gathered, I loved you all differently. I loved you unevenly. And I make no apologies for that. Love is not a currency to be divided equally. It is an investment. And Claire, my brightest light, I invested in you not because you were the most obedient, but because you never asked me who I needed you to be. You simply became who you were. Silence. I didn't look up. To Betty and Charles, I say this plainly. I see now that your love came with terms and conditions. That isn't love. That's control dressed up in discipline. You tried to box Claire in, shrink her voice, bury her questions. But questions are how things grow. You feared what you didn't understand. And rather than face that fear, you made her feel like she didn't belong. Shame on you. I heard my mother shift in her seat. A sharp inhale. My father's jaw locked so tightly, I could hear his molars grind. Mr. Keene continued. Vanessa, your loyalty to them was never the problem. Your silence was. You stood in the room while they broke her spirit and said nothing. You were old enough to know better. And now, so is she. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward me, something unreadable in her expression. But I didn't meet her gaze. To Claire, the greenhouse collapsed. The one you built when you were 10. Do you remember what I told you then? Perfect disasters teach us more than perfect plans. You were not made to follow a script. You were made to write your own role. So, I've made arrangements. The land is yours. The annex I started, yours. Everything tied to the Whitman Agricultural Research Fund, every patent and pending partnership, all under your name. A gasp. I wasn't sure if it was from Vanessa or my mother. Maybe both. They will protest. Let them. I built this for you. Not just because I believed in your mind, but because I believed in the world your mind would help shape. The letter ended simply. Write the things they don't understand. One day the world will. Grandpa. The silence after the reading was not dignified. It was electric. Dangerous. This is a joke, my father said, rising to his feet. She hasn't even been part of the family for years. And now she gets what? The land? The lab? The fund? Mr. Keen's voice didn't waver. That is correct. It is legally binding. Walter filed the revision with 2 witnesses and a certified psychiatrist present, ensuring full mental clarity. My mother stood now too. You think you can just show up after all these years and steal what he built for the family? I stood as well. He didn't build it for the family. He built it for the future. And you were never interested in that unless it came with a press release and a plaque with your names on it. You ungrateful child. No, I said sharply. Stop calling me that. You forfeited that right the moment you decided obedience mattered more than love. Vanessa was the only one still seated. She looked down at her lap, then up at me, voice barely above a whisper. Did you know? Not until now, I said. But I think he did. They left without another word. The door didn't slam. It clicked shut, final, clean, like the end of a chapter that didn't need revisiting. Grandma sat quietly on the couch near the window. Her hands were still now. She looked up at me with a tired kind of peace. They'll come back, I whispered. Maybe, she said. But this time, we don't have to let them in. It took a while for that to sink in. I had spent most of my life trying to prove myself to people who didn't love me the way I needed, who couldn't. And I thought if I just worked harder, just excelled enough, maybe I would finally be accepted. Finally be enough. But in that room, as my grandfather's words wrapped around me like armor, I realized something. You can't earn love from people who don't know how to give it. But you can choose to stop begging. Later that night, I stepped onto the back porch of the house. The boards creaked under my weight, a sound that once meant childhood. Now it meant change. The magnolia trees were still blooming. In the distance I could see the red clay field where Grandpa let me build my first greenhouse. The one that collapsed after 2 weeks. He'd called it a perfect disaster. And we'd laughed about it for years. I thought about that girl with dirt on her knees and too many questions. The girl who never felt like she belonged at that long mahogany table. She finally had a place. I went back inside. Grandma had placed a kettle on the stove, moving slowly but with purpose, you know, she said. Walter started designing that annex 5 years ago, before he even got sick. He told me, Claire needs a place where she doesn't have to ask permission to be herself. That's when the tears came. Quiet. No checking. Just release. That night, I slept in my childhood room for the first time in a decade. The wallpaper was faded, the mattress too soft. But the ceiling? It still had those glow-in-the-dark stars Grandpa helped me stick up when I was 9. I'd made him arrange them in scientifically accurate constellations. He never questioned it. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt reclaimed. He'd built me a sanctuary. The weeks that followed were a blur. I moved in full-time. I called 2 friends from my grad program, Tara and Micah, people who didn't flinch when you talked too fast or too deep. We started small, local grants, experimental irrigation systems, open field trials. We failed often, burned circuits, cried over broken experiments and rejection emails. But we kept showing up. The lab became more than a building. It became a language. One that didn't require me to prove my right to speak. One that let me be intense, or silent, or brilliant, and never had to apologize for any of it. 3 months after the annex opened, I got the message. From Vanessa. Not a call. Not an apology. A lawyer's email. Subject: Request for visit. Whitman Innovation Annex. I felt my jaw lock. The nerve. I prepared for a battle. Legal threats. Another play for control. I alerted Mr. Keen. But when she arrived, She wasn't the Vanessa I remembered. No heels. No lipstick. Just a too large coat and tired eyes. Her hands shook. She walked through the door and looked straight up at Grandpa's portrait.
He always knew who you were, she said.
Even when I didn't. I said nothing.
I'd like to see it, she said.
What you built. What he left for you. Every instinct screamed no. But I gave her the tour.
No lecturas.
No performances. Just truth. She walked slowly, asked quiet questions, touched the student photo wall, lingered over the youth science notebooks, stopped at the community garden, watched a father kneeling beside his daughter as she measured soil moisture. Then her voice cracked. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to see what he saw in you. You mean what he never saw in you? I said.
Cold.
Sharper than I meant to be. She flinched, but nodded.
Yes.
That. Silence stretched between us like thread pulled too tight. Then, why didn't you just let me be proud?
I asked.
Because if you were enough, she said, then I wasn't. She comes back now, twice a year. Volunteers with the youth program. Helps students with presentation skills and confidence. They call her Coach V. She hasn't apologized. Not with words. But she shows up. And maybe that's enough. It's been 6 years since the will reading. I haven't spoken to my parents. They appear in articles sometimes. Donation lists. Charity events. Pictures in gated communities. But they're strangers now. What I focus on instead is the work. The annex is now a research campus. For labs. 3 greenhouses. A testing facility. A youth outreach program called the Little Scientist Initiative, now in 9 states and 2 countries. Last month, I stood on a stage in San Francisco, accepting a National Climate Innovation grant. Me wore Grandpa's pocket watch in my suit. Inside it, faded and folded, was a photo of me at age 10, standing proudly beside a honeybee display. MHE carried this every day, Grandma had told me.
Now it sits on my desk.
Some days, when the sun hits it just right, it lights up my research notes. And when I feel lost, I sit by the bench at the far end of the fields, where I can see the stars. Not glow-in-the-dark plastic ones. Real ones. And I listen. Because sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, I can hear him. Write the things they don't understand. One day the world will.
And now,
it finally does. It started with a knock. Not the hesitant tap of a visitor. Not the pounding of a threat. Just a knock, firm, rhythmic. Like someone who believed they had a right to be let in. I almost didn't answer. I was knee-deep in grant applications, the sun was going down, and my back ached from a full day in the field. But something in the air shifted. That feeling again. The one I got the day Grandpa's letter was read aloud. I opened the door. And froze. Standing on the porch, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, was Jacob Whitman, my father's younger brother. My uncle. The one who had kept his distance during the funeral. The one who, according to family rumor, never could keep his opinions to himself. He was holding a briefcase and a leather-bound folder. His expression was unreadable. Polite. But his eyes flickered across the porch like he was collecting evidence.
Claire, he said.
May I come in? I didn't move at first. The last time I saw Uncle Jacob was 10 years ago, at some hollow family event where he said my name wrong and asked if I still did the bug stuff. This isn't a good time, I said. I think it is, he replied evenly. I didn't come to fight. I came to deliver something. Walter left behind. More than we knew. That stopped me. More? I echoed. What kind of more? He held up the leather folder. Another letter. Not addressed to the family. Not even to you directly. But it's about you. And them. And what comes next. I let him in. We sat at the long conference table in the annex's small meeting room. My space, my rules. I kept the door open, just in case I needed to signal Tara or Micah to intervene. Not because I thought Jacob would harm me physically, but because words could hurt more. You said he left a letter. I said. Where has it been all this time? Jacob exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. It was found in a safe deposit box in Asheville, different from the others. No one knew it existed, not even Margaret. The bank contacted me when they found my name as secondary custodian. I debated whether to bring it here. But after what I've heard, after how they treated you, I had to. He handed me the folder. Inside was a sealed envelope, unmistakably Grandpa's handwriting. On the front, to be opened only if they try to take it from her. I stared at the words until they blurred.
What do you know about it?
I asked, not yet ready to break the seal. Jacob folded his hands on the table. His voice dropped low, like he was afraid the walls might listen. Walter wasn't just protecting your inheritance, Claire. He was protecting your identity, your name, your work, your intellectual property. The annex, the research, he filed everything under your trust, not the family estate. I know, I said. Mr. Keene explained all of that. No, Jacob said, leaning forward. He didn't explain this. He opened his briefcase and pulled out an envelope with court filings. Your parents, Betty and Charles, have filed an informal challenge. They're not after the lab or the land. They're trying to discredit you. T.O. claim you were emotionally unstable, manipulated an elderly man, and that the will was influenced by your obsession with legacy. I felt the room sway. They wouldn't. They already did, Jacob said grimly. But Walter knew they might. That's why he created this letter. A final defense. I broke the seal. Inside was a 6-page handwritten letter and a copy of a psychiatric evaluation dated 3 years prior to his death, signed by his physician and 2 independent witnesses. But it wasn't the legal protections that gutted me. It was the words. If this is being read, then they're trying to make her disappear again. Don't let them. They erased her once. They will not do it twice, not while I still have breath in these pages. I couldn't breathe. I read each line aloud. Jacob sat in stunned silence as the letter recounted conversations, timelines, facts. Grandpa had documented the manipulation. He'd tracked what was said about me, who said it, and when. Vanessa's interference. My mother's lies. My father's denials. They told me she was cold, Grandpa wrote. But all I saw was a child burning to be understood. I dropped the page. My fingers were trembling. They're trying to make me unstable, I said. To invalidate the science. The program. Everything. Jacob nodded. You need to decide, Claire. Fight this legally, or destroy them with the truth. I didn't want to destroy them. That would mean they mattered. But the truth? That needed a spotlight. I invited them back. Not for reconciliation. For exposure. The setting was neutral, the annex's largest meeting room. I invited Mr. Keene and the annex's lawyer. Vanessa showed up first, pale but composed. Then my parents, both dressed like they were testifying in court. This is absurd, my mother said, the moment she Saturday. We don't have time for more drama. You found time to accuse me of mental instability in a legal brief, I replied. So here we are. My father looked away. Vanessa looked like she wanted to melt into the wall. I pulled out the letter, the original, placed it on the table. He knew what you'd do, I said. So, he left a map. They didn't speak. Grandpa saw everything, heard everything, and documented it, including Vanessa's forged voicemail logs, including the altered number you gave Grandma, including the fake funeral time. Vanessa gasped. I didn't. He had your handwriting analyzed, I snapped. The voicemail log? You left the original by accident in his desk. He found it. He kept it. And now so do I. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. Her face went sheet white. He left me evidence. Not just love. Not just legacy. Proof. You tried to erase me, again. But this time, I leaned forward. I own the pen. The legal challenge evaporated 2 weeks later. Quietly, without apology. Their lawyer sent a settlement offer, wrapped in fake pleasantries and thin disclaimers. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. In the months that followed, the annex grew faster than we imagined. We secured partnerships with 3 agricultural universities. The Little Scientist Initiative expanded into the Midwest. One of our students, Amber, won a national junior grant. Vanessa called me after the award. She's like you, she said softly. Amber. She sees things nobody else notices.
No, y correcta.
She sees things we all stopped looking for. Grandma's health is fading now. But she still joins me on the porch every Sunday, wrapped in a quilt Grandpa bought in 1978, sipping coffee she barely drinks. He was right, she told me last week. You were never meant to fit their mold. You were meant to break it. I rest my hand over hers. Thinner now, but steady. Thank you, I say, for letting me come back. She squeezes once. You didn't come back, sweetheart. You just finally took up space. The annex is more than a facility now. It's a refuge, a movement, a story rewritten. And tucked in the corner of my desk drawer, right under the grant files, is Grandpa's last letter. Sometimes I reread the final line before I face a hard day. If they try to erase her again, tell them this. You cannot delete light. It finds a way. It always does.
He was right.
This isn't just my lab. It's the page they never expected me to write. Like what you're reading. There's more where that came from. Subscribe for thoughtfully crafted stories, character-driven narratives, and writing that stays with you long after the last sentence. Be the first to know when new chapters, stories, or content drops. No spam, just stories worth your time. Hit follow or subscribe now, and let the words keep finding you.